Good morning, New Vision Center. It is so good to be with you this morning. I tell you what, as a speaker, we love to do these long series where we have 2, 3, sometimes even 4 talks in a row, so we get to really dig in to a topic. And I was explaining to, I think it was David and Ralph, that one of us is busy digging into a big topic, and the other one is like, my turn? No. My turn? No. It's my turn. And as much as we love doing these big, long series, too, Reverend Karen's just coming off a 3-week series, I think it's awfully nice to be like, not my turn. Our topic today is faith is the fertilizer. And Reverend Jeff was like, we're talking about fertilizer. So we're in a year of talking about the seeds of love, playing with the metaphor about gardening and growing, yes, plants and beloved beings around us, pets and family members and friendships, and ourselves, growing the garden on the inside of ourselves. And I want to thank Karen Blakely for succumbing to my wishes to read that beautiful quote from This Thing Called You by Ernest Holmes. It basically is this talk, but it was a little bit long to just stand up here in the middle of the talk and read that reading. So thank you so much for playing along with that. In order to play with this idea of, is faith the fertilizer of my life, we have to first kind of come to some agreement on what is the definition of faith and what is fertilizer for. So the definition of faith, according to Ernest Holmes in the Glossary of Science of Mind, he points out that faith is different from belief. We tend to think faith and belief are synonymous, but he says no, faith is different from belief. Belief is a conviction or feeling of the truth of proposition or condition. Conviction or feeling of the truth. A belief may go no farther than intellectual assent, while faith embodies a trust and a confidence. So how many times have either I, Reverend Leslie, because I think I forgot to say that, or Reverend Karen, or Reverend Jeff, or Reverend Penny, or Reverend Michelle, or Reverend Sally, or Reverend Joyce, or any of our amazing ministers and practitioner speakers stood up here and said, we're trying to move you from here to here. We're trying to move you from here to here, from an idea of I understand, or I know, into the heart space, where it is a trust and a confidence that the universe has got us, that it's safe to be who and what we are, right where we are, right as we are. That's the difference between a belief where we know, we read it in all the same books. It's just me that has 57,000 books that say the same thing, right? Yeah. Boy, bless your sweet hearts if you try to get rid of your spiritual books. Like, I'll pass them on to someone else. Not in this community. They all have the same books. To make some new friends who haven't read them yet. So if we're going to feel into faith is the embodied trust and confidence in the divine's work in our life. Faith is the fertilizer. What's fertilizer do? Fertilizer adds value. So like literal fertilizer in the dirt, it adds nutrients, it adds moisture, it adds fiber content, it adds a place for the microbiome to thrive and grow, right? It gives little pockets in there for CO2. Plants just love their CO2. In the spiritual world, the value we're looking for is a deepened space of understanding of spiritual principles and qualities in our lives. So if we need faith to be fertilizer, what we're doing is we're creating little pockets in our wall of I know. I have a wall of I know. Do you guys have a wall of I know? You know, where we're so intellectually sure about the way the world works that there isn't even a little peephole, a little pinhole to get a new idea in there. And you got to kind of karate chop it in, get a space in there. Ha! I'm getting a request to do it again from a completely random person in the front row. You can just imagine what it's like at our house. So when we're taking this idea of faith as fertilizer into the teaching of science of mind, we like to refer back to the teaching symbol. So we have the teaching symbol here. And you notice all the dirt's hanging out in that middle section of the teaching symbol. That's the space of the soul, of the law, of the unconscious beliefs. And all those little stars, all those little sparkles are the positive and negative and neutral beliefs and ideas and thoughts and memories and dreams and stuff we saw on TV, all the stuff that's kind of in the us that makes us our personality. And we make the mistake of thinking our personality is who we are. Anybody ever fall into that? Our personality is who we are. But no, who we are is that faith being underneath all of that is a channel, a unique channel for divine energy. What's in our soil is just what happens to be in our soil. And here's the exciting part. We get to change that. If it doesn't fit how we want to show up in the world, we have control over what happens in that middle layer of soil. We have control over it in our gardens. We're in there digging things out and adding things in and changing things up and turning things over all the time in our gardens, right? It's true in spirit, too. It's true in our consciousness, too. We spend the vast majority of our spiritual up-levelment energy in the dirt, in the spiritual dirt of our own selves, which is why I often feel like this. But look how happy he looks. That's one happy piggy. And that's what we do together. We get in the dirt together and we dig through our unconscious beliefs and ideas and we decide what we want and then we add the faith as the fertilizer. And one of the ways we can really add a lot of value with our faith is to lean into some key qualities of God that were listed in that beautiful long reading from This Thing Called You. So we're going to talk about wholeness, love, and joy. The yummy, yummy, yumminess of faith that we work into the soil of our own life so that what's coming up at the bottom of our teaching symbol is these beautiful plants and flowers instead of, spindly little weeds that aren't quite what we thought we were manifesting. You with me? Excellent. So let's start talking about wholeness. In this reading, in this wonderful reading that Karen shared with us, Ernest Holmes was talking about guard well the garden of your life. And he said, it is God's garden of your soul. It is God's garden of your soul. It did not say, guard well the garden of your life. You are in it on your own. Suck it up, buttercup. It's God's garden of your soul. And the beautiful thing about that is it's not yours alone. Nothing is ever yours alone. There is always, always, always this presence. We tend to imagine it as this presence right with us. That darned W word that we talk about in practitioner training so much, right with us. Except it's not with us at all. It is in us. It is showing up through us, and it is existing as us. Spirit only expresses on the manifest form, on the physical form, as its creation, which is us. Every single being, every single place, every single time is God in form. So if we're talking about the garden of my soul is actually the God's garden of my soul, can it be wrong? Can it be broken? Can it be pathetic? Right? And yet, how many times have we sat in the midst of our garden and gone, everything's wrong. Everything's falling apart. This is just pathetic. I can never be or have or create or express what I want because I am not whatever enough. What if we were to tell you that there's no such thing? That it cannot be. That to claim that you specifically are not enough is to say that the infinite universe is not enough. Well, none of us would probably say that, right? I'm looking around. I'm giving you the opportunity to be like, I think, no? We got a lot of jokers in this room. That was a dangerous thing to say. When we are leaning into wholeness, the state of being whole, complete, perfect, as in every single part of me is God. There's nothing but the divine. There's not a single aspect of the divine missing in me. Nothing broken, nothing lacking, nothing. Nothing that is not the perfection of the one. Feel into that. Now, since we've read all the same books and we've taken all the same classes, we know this, right? I have not said a word up here so far that you're like, what? This is not new news. And the truth is, very, very rarely will you hear any of us, Reverend Karen, Reverend Lori, myself, Reverend Jeff, any of us up here saying something that makes you go, now that I've never heard. Because the mystics of all time in every faith tradition have been saying the same thing, right? Where it's really not that complicated in here. As Jeff would say, that infinitesimally long trip from the head to the heart is the hard part. To go from knowing it to knowing it. And that is about wholeness. So if you look around and you find the face of someone you love, someone you value, someone you think is neat. I mean, the room's full of them, right? And feel into this question. Do I believe that you are whole? Just the way you are. Do I believe that? It's so easy, isn't it? It's so easy. And catch a hold of that feeling. Catch a hold of that sureness. And look back in those eyes and see how they are looking at you with the same sureness. And catch a hold of it. Sometimes we have to borrow someone else's faith. If we can't have faith in that wholeness for ourselves in the moment, I'll have faith in your faith. Have faith in your faith. Because we know if I have that much faith in you, how could I not believe you about me? In our garden, we inherently understand that our plants know how to grow. Right? We take care of them, but we don't get down there on our hands and knees and go, multiply yourselves. You got to multiply yourselves. We know that Spirit is in there doing it, right? It's doing it in us too. Even when we want to change, in our wholeness, we want to grow, we want to expand, we want to try something new and hard and scary and important. Spirit is in there, whispering, be more of who you are. There's so much more in there. Be all of it. It's happening all the time. Faith is a powerful acceptance that this is inevitable, that this miracle that happens in us is God's grace in action. It's inevitable. It is always happening. So once we open up to this idea of wholeness, this idea that we don't have to micromanage every single micron of every single thing, we can let go and we can let the divine start moving through us as us and move us along this path, then we have the space to open up even more into love. In that same reading, Ernest Holmes said, "Plant love in your garden. Kindness and sympathy flow from the heart of love, and human goodness follows divine realization at every turn in life's road." I'm going to read it again because that sounds like a really simple, sweet little kindness and joy, and that's all really good. But there's an important statement here. Kindness and sympathy flow from the heart of love, and human goodness follows every divine realization. So what do we know about science of mind? In our Declaration of Principles, the what we believe statements, Ernest Holmes says, here's my famous paraphrase where I take part of one and part of the other and stick them together. The highest God and the innermost God is one God, right? Is all the same. Every faith, every practice, everything from the most grandiose to the teeniest little quiet moment of inspiration. All just the one thing. And anyone may become a revealer of truth, of divine revelation, who chooses to live in close proximity with that indwelling spirit. And this tells us, so we're all divine revelation masters, yes? We meditate, we pray, we tune in, we feel that, I call it this. That's the thing with divine revelation. There's not a lot of great words for it, right? But that impetus, that energy comes up and it leads us to be something, do something, feel something. It comes from the inside. It is God speaking as us. And in that divine realization, here's the promise. Human goodness always follows. Well, hey, we just solved all of it. All of it. What about serial killers? We just solved it. What about war? We just solved it. If we can get it from here to here. We tune in, we listen, we believe when the voice of the divine comes up within us, that it is that, and that we're not just crazy people making stuff up in our head, because we like to do that when it gets complicated, right? Right? Leslie, go to ministerial school. Oh, no. That's just the silly ego voice talking because I didn't want to deal with it. Over and over, though, when the waves come, when it comes following prayer and meditation, when it comes in prayer and meditation, at a certain point, you have to say, okay, fine, I'll move to Eureka. Fine, okay. And when we act upon divine revelation, human goodness always follows. That's some serious fertilizer, y'all. In the garden of our soul, when we trust that, what do? We turn into what we put in and what we take out. When we believe that human goodness always follows when we follow the impetus, we listen for the putting in. What deserves my care? What needs my attention? Who, what, and where? Out in the world and on the inside of me. And often it's just presence, a showing up for ourselves through self-care, through that blessed word of no, and a givingness to everyone and everything through that human goodness, that loving kindness. And it also gives us a calling on what to take away. When we're in the mud, when we're happy pigs in the mud, a lot of what we're doing in there is looking through that collection of thoughts and beliefs and ideas and things that we've stored away over the years. Some of them since we were little. Some of them we didn't even know were in there until we're, hanging out in that dirt, poking around, and deciding, this one's amazing. This is the one that tells me I can do anything. I'm definitely keeping this one in my dirt. And this one, this is the voice of my third grade teacher telling me maybe I should just hum. Getting that? Like a rock, right? And this is when I realized that I had a talent and I could play with it and nurture it. Definitely keeping this one. And this is the time I screwed up. And it whispers to me that I'm going to screw it up again every time I bump into it. No, I'm going to pull that whole weed out. I'm done with this one. I'm going to chuck it. We'll compost it. We'll turn it into something good. That's what we're doing. And it is loving ourselves. Just as much as it's loving our garden to do that work, it's loving ourselves. And when we follow that impetus, human goodness always follows, which means the love just starts trickling out. We don't even have to plan it. The kinder we are to ourselves, the kinder we are to absolutely everyone and everything. Can you see how that would be true? How much easier it is to be soft, even when people really biff it in front of you. Like somebody just snaps and is rude or mean. When you're being really kind to yourself, it's easy for you to go, that's okay, sweetie. You're having a rough day. Right? But if you haven't been kind to yourself, what is the temptation? Snap back. Right? But we have chosen to be conscious people. If you're new here, surprise, that's what we do here. You're welcome to the party. We've chosen to be conscious, to do our very best, to be the person that can say, that sounds really frustrating. I feel for you. And give them that moment to breathe and remember, oh, yeah, I'm human. I'm human. That's what we do here. Is it always easy? No. Are we 100% perfect at it every time? No. Am I? No. No. But moment by moment, choice by choice, bit by bit, what we find is it gets easier. It becomes a more natural part of who we are. And then one day we wake up and we think, I used to be like that all the time, and I just don't even remember the last time I felt that way. I have been doing a good job in my garden. The third quality, and the one we kind of tend to forget, because we're in the garden working. We're working. We got rocks, and we got weeds, and we got stuff to do. And when you let rise up in your mind a beautiful garden meadow, there's a real good likelihood that there's a little child playing somewhere on the edges, right? Running around, maybe picking dandelions or daisies and just having a good old time. We forget joy. Less here than in some spiritual communities, because this community really likes a party. But we forget the moment-to-moment, day-to-day joy. It's essential. If we're going to move from here to here, it's essential to let go of the need to be so serious all the time. If we're really trusting that idea of wholeness, that it's all the divine, that includes slightly off-color jokes and pranks and goofy behavior and that weird thing that I do where I make up songs out of absolutely nothing that don't have meaning in the office all the time, and dancing and not caring if we're good dancers or not. Because it's all God. The minute we start taking one little piece out of it and saying, this is all divine, this is all sacred, and that's mundane, or that's secular, or that's worldly, or that's not spiritual, the whole castle falls down, right? There's either wholeness or not wholeness. And what do? We make rules about how people should act. Good vibes only. You know what happens with good vibes only? The wall falls down because it's either all of it, or it's not. And so that frees us up from the tendency to try to force ourselves to appear different than we really are. I, for one, I know this is going to be a big surprise. Prepare yourselves. I'm goofy. I know. It's shocking. But I am legitimately, authentically goofy. Like, it's deep. And I have had people at times say, like, you'll mature into your spiritual nature. No, I won't. If I haven't done it by now, right? I don't have to mature into my spiritual nature because I am my spiritual nature as goofy. And I'm good with it, right? And we are each our own form of whatever that is. Sometimes my good friend Mark, a couple of times, my good friend Mark has said, I hear you say, like, you're maybe not everybody's cup of tea, or you're kind of crazy. What's up with that? Like, I'm just owning it. There's something really freeing about owning who you really are and just being your joyful self, whether that is your joyful quiet self, or your joyful sweet self, or your joyful goofy self, or your joyful loud self. I'm that too. Just being who we are and owning it with that full thing of joy. You know what that is because it's what you were as a child before life told you it should be different. And when we're really, really feeling safe, it bubbles back up, doesn't it? It bubbles back up. Ernest Holmes, in the book The Philosophy of Jesus, said we need not be afraid of being childlike, for only through an attitude of faith and trust in the universe can we ever hope to recapture our lost paradise. And the reading in this thing called You said, guard well your garden of the soul. It is your Garden of Eden. It is your paradise. And as we lean into that fertilizer of faith with wholeness and love and joy, move it from the head into the embodied heart, we are stepping right into our own individualized Garden of Eden. That is the invitation. Are you with me? And so it is. And so let us take that into prayer. How good it is to remember that who we always have been, always, is an expression of unique divinity. That our natural, joyful, pure, loving expression is goodness in action, is literally the healing that the world is calling for. How beautiful it is to remember that as we turn within to prayer, to meditation, to listening, to contemplation, that Spirit is right there in and through and as each one of us, whispering into our souls the revelation that always leads to human goodness, that always leads to a deeper loving kindness, that always guides us to our next best step. That it's already in us, that there's nothing to chase or force. We get to just lay in the mud of the garden of our own soul with that smile of a very, very satisfied piggy and know that everything is unfolding perfectly. Whatever energy we brought into this room, whatever feeling on our heart we brought into this service, into this online room, that Spirit is right with us, in us, as us, through us, already conspiring with the entire universe for its resolution and for the revelation of goodness as our lives. It's not a thought. It's not a belief. We have faith in its truth. Faith in its truth. I'm so grateful to stand in that faith with every one of the beloveds within the sound of this voice. So grateful. And we just release it into the law. I know that it's good as we say together, and so it is.